All right, so another reason I think I went back to being a right winger, back to being a left winger after being a right winger. So my whole life I was a left winger, right? And I became a right winger in 2014, and I went back to being a left winger. But another reason why I did that was, again, I wanted basketball videos when I was younger, and I thought maybe if I became a left winger, I'd have a higher chance of getting the basketball videos. But regardless, I'm gonna go back to the story. So, I had a hurt leg. I wanted to get help with my leg. And I was trying to get help from my dad. My dad wouldn't talk to me. I wanted to see my mom and dad. My mom and dad wouldn't see me. They wouldn't talk to me. My mom still thought I had a mental illness, even though the doctors told her. They gave me the MMPI. They gave me all the tests. They said I didn't have a mental illness. So, and then my mom thought that I tricked them, but the doctor said, no, you can't trick the doctors. If you have a mental illness, you can't hide it. So if I hid it, then I didn't have a mental illness. And then, so the thing that was really just upsetting me so much was I knew the shoot away messed up my shot, and I could show in the videos, and I want to show my grandpa, and I would much later tell my grandpa, like, let me show you the videos. My grandpa would be like, I'm not interested. But I wanted to show him. I can show exactly what happened to my shot. You can see, and now the thing that upsets me is they want to believe that there was something wrong with me. And my grandpa probably thinks I'm a piece of crap. Oh, you're just, the reason you fought with your dad was you're playing bigger against bigger, better players. That's what he said. And I'm going to get to that more later. But he just thought I was a piece of crap. I was always the best. I was always super good. And if I had the videos to study the moves I did, that would help so much. It's just sad that I don't have the videos, that my dad didn't record more, and that, because they didn't help me, I lost a lot of videos and stuff. And it's just tragic, everything that happened, But like I said, I think of the big part of it was my grandpa's. My grandpa's quote unquote help made things 1,000 times worse. So, like I said, I wanted to talk to my mom, but my mom would be like, no talking about the past. But I just wanted to bring up basketball so that she would know it wasn't something wrong with me. Now, she would be like, Ryan, you're trying to, can I talk to dad? You can't force people to talk to you. You can't make things happen, because she's trying to mimic my grandpa. But she doesn't realize, my grandpa's, the metapsychiatry is about peace, assurance, gratitude, and love, not being, rejecting people, dismissing your son, and acting like that. So she just didn't understand. She's just crazy, but she didn't know it. I mean, it was really because of the shoot away machine. If it wasn't for the shoot away machine, none of this stuff would have happened. I was always, my mom, this is what my mom said. She said, you just couldn't handle the pressure and you fell apart. And that's why your shot got messed up. That's not true. I was always had ice in my veins. I was always a clutch player. I was always the best. And even after the shooting machine, if you looked at me, I was still amazing. I was still doing amazing stuff. And I was shooting good even at the beginning of the shoot away machine. But if you look at what I was doing, my shot got messed up because of how I was moving into shots. It was because I was just doing what I was practicing, picking the ball off of the rack. And I started shooting in games, running forward like I was picking the ball off a rack, the way no good shooter shoots. And I can go into details, about my feet. And then my dad tried to fix it and told me to do the exact wrong thing. And then made everything just deteriorate even more. So if it wasn't for the shoot away machine, none of this stuff would happen. So like I said, I went to my grandma's house and I wanted to get help, my grandma to talk to my mom and dad, to get my mom and dad to see me and talk to me and help me with my leg. But my sister was there. She wouldn't let me in the house. So I threw some pots into the door. And then they called the police. So then I had to end up going to court. And I ended up just getting anger management. I've never been to jail. The only time I've ever been to jail was 2 times because of these family things. Or maybe 3 times because of the family things. And I'm going to get to that. And each time I just got anger management. I never spent any time in prison. I just had to do anger management or community service. But this time I had to do I think it was anger management. Because what happened was, like I said, my sister wouldn't let me in the house. I just wanted to get help. I was living in San Diego, and I drove all the way to Los Angeles. I wanted to get help from my grandma. My sister wouldn't let me in the house, so I threw pots at the door. Then, like I said, my grandpa started teaching me stuff. But again, at this time, I didn't understand the flow. I didn't understand what he was talking about. And I was going to get to, my grandpa didn't believe the quadrant model. And my grandpa was trying to be all rational. My grandpa thought it was magical thinking to think that there's magic with the cross or with the quadrant, and he was like, no, there isn't this one pattern, and he thought it was just crazy, but my grandpa was trying to be all rational. And the thing is, I studied later metapsychiatry. This is what they teach, and again, it's I always thought it was victim blaming. It's like they teach, you basically your inside creates the outside. My grandpa would say stuff like this. My grandpa would say, nothing comes into your experience uninvited, and there is no such thing as an innocent victim. And I always thought that was victim blaming. And like, oh, so bad things happen to you. Oh, it was because of you. It's a victim blaming thing. Or, oh, good things happen to you. Oh, that was because of you. So it extols the winners and it blames the victims. So I always thought it was kind of a bullshit type of thing. But then my grandpa would try to limit it. So Dr. Hora, the guy who was the founder of metapsychiatry, who my grandpa got the PhD under, he taught that like everything was that. And he taught that the reality was an illusion and, we're basically like a dream reality. And yes, if there's a storm, it's because you created it with your thoughts, your invalid thoughts, right? But my grandpa would try to make it more rational. But he still was, an existentialist. Like, you have to take responsibility. So my grandpa's like, yes, it is possible. Everything is energy. So, Jesus could control the storms with his mind, and or not with his mind, because everything is energy. There is no mind, and it's just everything is energy. So he could, multiply bread, and he could, control the wind and stuff. But then I would ask him, like, well, what do you think about, like, do you think that disease, like AIDS is a punishment for sin? And Dr. Hora would say, yes, AIDS comes from invalid thoughts. But my grandpa would be like, my grandpa tried to make stuff more rational. So he was still new age, but he tried to make it more rational and more naturalistic. And he always used the word energy because it's more scientific, right? So Dr. Hora didn't use the word energy. Dr. Hora believed that everything was consciousness or, a dream type of thing. But my grandpa would try to make everything more scientific, and he would say everything's energy, so long as you believe everything is one, So my grandpa would be like, no, no, there's just contamination in the world, but to say that, it's due to sin, that's magical thinking, and believe that there's a separate God, but, everything is one. And, it's just, sometimes, there's contamination in the world, and sometimes people just get diseases and stuff. But, Dr. Hora didn't really believe that more. Dr. Hora would be more like, no, if this isn't, and I only know this now because I studied this stuff way later. So at the time I was just confused with my grandpa, but I'll get more to that later. But my grandpa just confused me. So my grandpa tried to be naturalistic, and that's what made me think he's more leftist. So because I was always naturalistic, and I was always confused too, because he seemed to be less naturalistic at first, but then I made fun of him when I was a leftist and I was anti-white because I was against religion, and I thought that religion was white supremacist. So I wanted to mix everybody. So my grandpa would try to be all, at that time seemed a little bit less naturalistic. Like, he believed in astrology and he seemed to be less naturalistic. But then I made fun of him for that a little bit. And also at first my grandpa would say things like, yeah, women tend to be more feelers, and men tend to be more relation oriented, and men tend to be more non-relation oriented. And then I remember I would tell my grandpa, don't make generalizations about people, about men and women, because I wanted race mixing, and I didn't want generalizations about blacks and whites because I wanted to defeat the white people. That was my underlying, mode of being. But my grandpa didn't know that. So my grandpa, then I don't know if he just was trying to be liked by me, or maybe he thought that it was more profound, but then he started to become more leftist in that way too. Like, oh yeah, everything is a social construction, and yeah, it's not about biology, it's about the environment. But at the same time, that kind of went in line with his existentialism. So my grandpa would be like, yeah, you have to take responsibility for everything. So my grandpa would be like, yeah, don't blame genes. I would tell my grandpa, like, what about Noam Chomsky? Noam Chomsky said that language is innate. And my grandpa would try to be like, no, nothing's innate. Because my grandpa didn't want to, he's an existentialist. They don't believe in God. They believe that you'd have to take responsibility for everything. So my grandpa would be like, no, to say that anything's innate or anything's due to genes, that would be, giving away taking away responsibility from yourself. And he thought that it's best, he said, whether it's true or not, it's best to take responsibility for everything. But later I would understand, you see, he just confused me. But later I would understand that he would say that, in the flow, you'd be able to discern, okay, maybe there is some genetic stuff. Like, for instance, with Bill Cosby. Like, Bill Cosby, he was like, well, part of the reason why he probably raped was because he had so much power, and that increased his testosterone. And I remember when he said that, I was like, what? I thought that you said that. I thought that you were saying that, never blame chemicals and don't blame genes and stuff like that. But so he always just confused me. But for the most part, he'd be like, yeah, don't blame genes and stuff. Genes don't make you sick, because that takes away responsibility from yourself. And he said, whether it's true or not, it's best to take responsibility and to upgrade your software. And never to blame, but just take responsibility, because he'd say, you can't change other people. You can only change, you can only change yourself. That's the only thing you have control over, yourself. But there is no self. But yeah, that's the only thing, to upgrade your software. That's the only thing you can do, upgrade your software. But, but then again, like I said, my mom would misinterpret that, and my mom would be like, yeah, you can't change us, Ryan. You can't change me. I'm not going to see you. You can't change your dad. We're not going to see you. It's never going to happen. So stop trying to change us. you know, because she would misinterpret what my grandpa said. So my grandpa would say, "Well, I cast pearls of swine. She has predator prey software. She expresses." He wouldn't say she has, because he would say, if you say she has, that's personalizing it. So you say she is expressing, predator prey software. It took me a long time to figure this stuff out, what he's trying to say. But, you know, she's expressing predator prey software. She's immature, you know, but she misinterpreted what I said. But then I would say, well, then tell her not to, because, you know, you the one, you fed her, you cast pearls of swine. Now fix it. You know, I can't, because she has to ask the question first. So he just made things 1,000 times worse. And so, you know, he's confusing me. And at this time, I didn't understand the flow. I didn't understand this stuff. And he's trying to be naturalistic, but also at the same time, new age and naturalistic at the same time. And it's like, and he didn't believe the quadrant model. And he thought that it was magical thinking, and he just didn't believe it. And it's just like, but he would be like, but everything, he would say, I know the theory of everything. Everything is energy. You know, everything is energy. And then later he would try, you know, like in like 2018 or whatever, he would try to pretend like he did believe the quadrant model, but he would be like, you know, so long as you believe everything is one, yes, everything is quadrants. But he would just be doing that just to make me feel good. And that's even fucking worse, because then I'd be like, well, you know, I remember asking my grandpa, like, well, what is a dog? Like, just a philosophical question. He was like, a dog is a quadrant. And I was like, dog's not a quadrant. What are you talking about? He's like, I thought you say that this is the theory of everything. I thought you said everything is quadrants. I'd be like, you don't understand what I'm talking about. I'm not. He's like, well, that's what you said. Everything is quadrants. You know, I believe everything is energy, but everything is, you say everything's quadrants. Well, so long as you believe everything is one, that's fine. You know, I'm like, no, you don't get it, dude. You don't get the quadrant model. The quadrant models, there's relationships, there's patterns, there's relationships in the quadrants, and things are organized around that. And you see it everywhere in existence. Well, I thought you said it's the theory of everything. Wasn't a dog everything? So he didn't understand it. And then this is the other thing, like, I would tell my grandpa, well, it's about relationships. There's relationships within and my grandpa, he confused me, and then he just got me really confused and messed up. So then this is like for a while, and it just messed me up mentally. And he'd be like, I don't like that idea. And I'd be like, why? And he'd be like, because I don't like the idea of relationships. Because relationships implies duality, but everything is one. But what he didn't understand is, yes, everything is one, but there's differentiation and there's oneness. And that's what I started learning when I was studying the Hinduism, studying at this temple in Utah in like 2020. That's what they were describing there. And yeah, in the quadrant pattern, everything is one, but there's also differentiation, and there is relationships, but there's also the oneness within the quadrant, right? But my grandpa, like, I don't like the idea of relationships, because everything, you know, that implies duality. And he didn't understand the quadrant model. And I would tell him, well, can you look, you know, later I would tell him, can you look through my, you know, when I started posting all my stuff on Facebook, this is like 2018 and stuff, I'd be like, you know, can you look through my quadrant stuff? He'd be like, I don't know how to do that. And he'd be, I'm not interested. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to use the Facebook stuff to click on this stuff. And so it's like, he just didn't, it was just so frustrating, and he just made things 1,000 times worse. So it's just like the whole situation was just terrible. And I'm going to get more into how I think that my grandpa made things like 1,000 times worse, how he confused me, how things just got out of control. But I'll get to that in the next talk.